Welcome back to the Dear Andy podcast. Coming to you live straight from my dining room table in the heart of Los Angeles. I am your host, Abby. This is episode 6, all about activism fatigue.
Welcome back to the Dear Andy podcast. It's been a while since I've, gotten on the mic and spoke to you guys about something. I've been away coping with my 3-year anniversary, also dealing with my birthday, which is very close to each other, and kind of just taking time away and kind of decompressing is what I call it. I've been burnt out and I haven't had that motivation. I feel like I've slipped into a bout of depression, which I think is fairly normal for someone like me. But I'm back, which is great. And today I'm going to be talking to you guys about activism fatigue. So, everybody knows and loves activism in whatever way, shape, or form, whatever you speak on, whether it may be something I'm for or against. That's your truth. Let it be. But activism takes form in many different ways, whether it's protesting, whether it's supporting a nonprofit, whether it's getting up in front of a classroom and speaking your truth, or getting up on stage and using your platform to speak on whatever issues you'd like. And everyone, I think, that is a part of the activism community or works and does, or is an activist as a whole, feels the fatigue. And the fatigue is so real. And I've talked about it with many activists in their various communities or activism communities. And it's been going on for generations, and it's nothing new. I found this quote, and the way that activism fatigue is it's described as many activists feel alone in their efforts, like if they don't show up, then the cause will suffer. But this problem isn't solved by working yourself harder. This will only result in your passion for activism dying out. And Nilofer Merchant explained this in an article about activism fatigue and how it's important to decompress or to self-care, and that this is real and that it's important that we acknowledge that activism work is not easy, no matter what you're speaking on. Speaking from personal stance, I went from dealing with my trauma and going straight into answer seeking, and building a community or community finding is hard. I directly wanted answers, and I wanted other people who were experiencing the same things that I were to find a community with each other and find that we were not alone. We are all in this together. And even with the information and the tools that I had to build up the community, it just felt like the weight of building that up was on my shoulders, and building up a community while you're coping and while you're still sorting through your feelings and sorting through whatever it is you're going through is really hard. I was watching this interview with Lauren Cashin from this band called Sharptooth, which I came across at Warped Tour this year. I didn't expect to hear what I heard. So I was at my favorite place in the entire world. And all of a sudden, I'm watching this band. I was like, oh, there's a female-fronted, hardcore band. That's pretty cool. Oh, look, their logo is, in the shape, or in the, organization of, the LGBTQ flag. I was like, oh, great, amazing. That's great representation. That's great. And then their front woman starts talking about her trauma. Lauren was talking about how she was raped and how it's important to be using her space and her time importantly as possible, and to talk about issues such as sexual violence and how she was raped too. And so I didn't expect that. And so it just hit me. And then she was starting to talk about statistics, and it drove me to my breaking point that I didn't think I would be reaching at Warped Tour. And so I spent half the song, or no, the entire song, and the entire time she was talking, sobbing, and really feeling that I didn't come here to feel represented in any way, shape, or form, but I am, and here it is. And I am ever so grateful for Lauren Cashin. And I spoke to her afterwards, and she is so amazing and so beautiful, and she is so strong. And it's the likes of her that she is breaking grounds through her activism work in her own hardcore community, in the music industry as a whole. It's important to be talking about these things and be able to open up and to use your stance, use your power, use whatever your outlet is. Not only is it finding her solace, but it's important for her to talk about these issues too. Because I know a lot of girls in the community that have already been survivors too, and who have been abused by guys on Warped Tour also. So it's great that she's using her platform, even though she's a newcomer, she's using her platform in a very important environment. And so she was talking about her trauma in an interview with Heart Support, and she says, "You don't always want to get up every day and be like sick. Can't wait to talk about being raped in front of thousands of strangers today. But at that point, it's no longer about me anymore. I think I've gotten enough support and help in trauma that I owe it to people." And so, even though I feel her and I feel exactly 100% what she's saying, I think it's also important to be able to decompress. And I don't think that she mentions that for the sake of the interview, but I can feel that she understands that, like, it's important to decompress also. And that she understands, like, the weight of, like, having the world on your shoulders and wanting to build up your community and wanting to be the face and the voice of your community, but it's also hard. And we shouldn't devalue that. We shouldn't take that away from anybody. I think the most important thing she should have mentioned is decompressing, and self-caring is important because it's hard to wake up and talk about issues like these every day. That's what I was struggling with when I was going in front of classrooms talking about sexual violence and how to understand what sexual violence is, what is consent, and all these other topics. It's hard. And sometimes these would be at like 8 a.m, and I'd be dragging myself out of bed. And some days are harder than others. And I've been lucky enough that some of those days that I was presenting, I didn't have a bad morning, or I didn't have a bad day where I didn't want to get up and go to campus and give this presentation. And I've kind of learned that it's okay to be exhausted, and it's okay to be tired. It's okay to take time from discussing issues to self-care and decompress. That's what I've been doing. I've stepped away from this podcast because I feel like all I do is talk about my trauma, and all I do is talk about my activism work and what I'm doing for my community. But I also feel like this is my only identity, and this is the only thing I feel like I'm good at, and the only thing I want to be doing. But it's so hard sometimes, especially around this time, especially for me. Like, even though I no longer speak in front of classrooms, I use this as my healing, and even this is hard for me on some days, and I have recognized that I have to take time away from this, and I have to separate myself, because sometimes talking about it all the time messes with my brain too much. Sometimes I don't want to talk at all. Like, I have so many people who I didn't even think, who knew my story, who I think just passively read through my Instagram posts or passively read what I was doing with my work. Like, they've come to me and they've expressed how proud they are of me and my ability to share my story, and that they are supporters of me and they're always here for me. And while I'm very appreciative of it, it's exhausting to never be able to run away from it. And that this is who I am, this is my new identity. I hear it in my mind, and I hear it from my friends, and I hear it from my family, and I feel like I can't let the world down. But sometimes it feels like the pressure is like swallowing me whole. Like, I have so much weight on my shoulders, and I feel like people are counting on me, but the problem isn't going to be solved by overworking myself. And I know that. And I recognize that. And I recognize that it's important for me to take time away to decompress. And so the question that I posed for myself for this podcast is, how do you combat activism fatigue when your life's purpose and dream is to keep fighting the good fight? And I think I just answered my question earlier. And by acknowledging that decompressing is really important and taking time to self-care is really, really important, and taking time to understand what are your healing methods. Like, I'm going to go see Sharptooth when they come down to LA in October, because I love Sharptooth and I love Lauren and I love what she speaks for and I love what their band speaks for. I have learned that music is still one of my ways to decompress, and I just take every opportunity that I can to go, and take every opportunity I can to enjoy it and to savor it, and to I tell myself day by day, hour by hour, minute by minute, second by second, like to be here, be present, and to be mindful of my thoughts and myself and my mental well-being, and to know what my limits are, and to know when to cut people off, and to know what issues are important to talk about that are great, that are better for my healing process than detrimental to it. I think the fatigue is real. It is so real, but it's also very valid, and it's important to acknowledge the fatigue. And so I apologize for my absence, but this is also important for me because I love this. I love talking about issues like this. It's important. But it's also important to decompress, and especially when times are sensitive like this, it's okay to step away from the things you love, and it's okay to take a break from the things you love. And to think of yourself, because you can't fight the good fight if you're not here anymore. And that's what I kind of been reiterating in my head a lot. So, thank you all so much. Thank you for this Welcome Back podcast. I will try and be consistent, and I'll be mindful of myself. But thank you so much for listening.